All right, so we're going to work on success rate and in success rate for 6th Street, which is a condo that I've been asked to, actually a couple of condos in the building that I've been asked to review as it relates to their potential for sale. So we're going to look at the market and success rate. So let's pull up the share. Here is our compass screen. We are looking for geography close to 1103 6th Street Northwest in Washington. And with success rate, what we're focused on is the time period that is generally short. It's generally very recent because the idea behind success rate is to capture something, to capture the market that is right now, or the market that is within the tight frame. Because the challenge with absorption rate, which already exists and is already a metric, is that absorption rate looks a lot farther back. If we're looking at sold properties, we could be looking at a whole nother season. Traditionally, if we're looking at absorption rate, we're in summer right now. Traditionally, if we're evaluating sold comps, we're looking at comps that go back to spring, right? Our training has us looking 90 to 180 days at sold properties. And was the market different 6 months ago than it is today?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right here in DC, I mean, incredibly different. So the challenge with absorption rate is while it gives us a perspective over time, it doesn't focus on the here and now, which is really the data we want. So the idea behind success rate is we're going to look at the right now data, and particularly we're going to include actives under contracts and pendings because those are the homes that reflect the market right at the moment. We're also going to look at closed, but we're going to look at closed only over a very short period of time. It could be 30 days. I would say no more than 45 to 60 days. Now, in this case, this home is a two-bedroom condominium, the home that is the subject property. So in looking at success rate, we want to, just like absorption rate, we want like properties, right? So we're going to look at condominiums, and specifically, we're going to look at two-bed plus condominiums, and we're going to pull the owners of this property bought their property for 675 about 5 years ago. So we're going to look at price, let's say up or down. Let's go with 150,000 for now. So 675, let's say 525 to we're challenging my math here today. 775, 825.
Good job.
And every once in a while I can get the math. It's probably the end of my coffee right now. Let's see, the end of the caffeine jolt. So now that's giving us 37 results, right? So down here we've got 37, which is pretty manageable. I'd say if we get any more than 100, then it's probably too many to manage. We're looking for somewhere, I'd say 25 plus to give us and we can shift the geography if we need to. We can expand. I wouldn't shift these statuses. I wouldn't shift closed much longer again than 45 or 60 days. Otherwise, we're looking too far back. Geography, though, we could go a lot farther out because we know that people are looking across many different markets. So from a curiosity perspective, if we go a mile out, we go up to 96. And for this analysis, we might want to do that just to get a sense, because people are looking broadly. This is a fairly center city location. So Let's do that. Maybe we'll tighten up the range a little bit to 550 to 800. And that doesn't change it a lot, but let's see what that does. So, organizing it by status, what that gives us, the 87 listings, you see a lot of actives, then active under contracts, and then our closed and pendings. So the easy way to calculate success rate, especially when you've got a big list like this, rather than having to 1, 2, 3, 4 count it, is to select everything. So select all of the comps that are in the analysis. Go to this create CMA and hit Google spreadsheet. And then in Google, the pop-up, are you guys seeing the pop-up?
Yep.
Right. So in the pop-up, click custom columns and then set the columns. And we only need very specific metrics for this analysis. So we're gonna keep we'll get rid of city, we'll get rid of structure type, we'll get rid of list office. We'll probably keep beds and baths because it could pull 3 or more, so that might be interesting to look at. But we need a few other statistics here. We need days on market, and we need, well, we have status. So we've got the 2 that we need. And once we've got all of that information, we were going to do, as we talked about last time, James, we might want to do square footage. So we'll do, for the purposes of this analysis, we've got a different square footage categories. Maybe we'll go with total finished square footage. And then we go back. If everything, grouped by status is helpful in this case. And
Client format.
I'm sorry?
What's the client format?
So client format, it's kind of like MLS is my understanding. I don't use the client format, or I should say I don't not select this on the regular. So I think what it does is it eliminates eliminates links to the agent information, the listing agent information. So then we click export, and that's going to do 2 things. It's going to pull up a separate Google sheet and start to format it, which will allow us to calculate success rate, number 1. And then number 2, it's also going to email you, just so you know, it's going to email you a copy of this same spreadsheet. It's going to send it to your Compass email.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that doing this spreadsheet is helpful is because it's going to give you, or you'll be able to sort of calculate the number of properties a little easier, because we can just look at, I can look at the columns here, I guess, 7 to 65. So that's 58. So there are 58 active listings. There are 71 to 87. So there are, what would that be? 16 contract, under contract. We've also got 93 to 103. So 10 sold. And that's a total, again, of 87 listings. So what we do is we take the under contract and sold and we add those together. So 16 plus 10, 26. So 26 that have successfully gone under contract or sold. We take that 26, we divide it by the total 87, 26 divided by 87, and that gives us a success rate of 29.9%. So that's our success rate. Right now, just about 30% of homes within a mile of the subject property that are condominiums, 2 bedrooms or more, are selling, are having success with going under contract. So that, again, is a little bit low. Not a lot low compared to some of what I've seen. Typically, what I'm looking for in success rate is I'm looking for around 50% or better. If it's less than 50%, then I've got a cooler market. And what I've seen in the condominium market, especially the small condominium market, is I've seen some success rates right now for studios, 1 beds at, boy, I ran one for one in Southeast Capitol Hill that was less than 10%. I think it was 9.8%, which is incredible, right? 1 out of every 10 condos, only 1 out of every 10 condos is selling.
Wow.
So in that area of that small condos in that area of Southeast on the hill. So now diving into the data here, okay, so 29.9%, not terrible, but not what we're looking for. So what other information can we glean quickly based on what we've just pulled? So number one, I would say if we order based on price, what I would say is it looks like you can see, look at what I'm looking at is where the under contracts and solds are relative to price, because we know that prices can, or buyers buy in price brackets, right? They tend to buy in price ranges. So I'm looking now for trends. Are there brackets that are healthier right now than other brackets? It looks like there's a chunk here under, let's say 590. There's a little chunk here under 590. You see a big gap here. You see this here between 620 and 660.
That are still active.
That are still active, right? Nothing has sold in this range. Then looking in this 660 to 670 range, all of a sudden, number of homes that have sold there in that range. Then we've got another chunk of inactivity. Here's another. So it's looking, what's interesting here is I'm seeing some of these brackets. I'm seeing a bracket under, let's say under 600. Then I'm seeing another bracket around 660. These are successful brackets, right? I'm talking about successful brackets. Successful brackets under 600, then a successful bracket under 660, then a successful bracket, I would say after that, it's starting to get a little, I'm not seeing a lot of trend, right? It's a little all over the place. It's not terrible. Again, I'm not seeing nothing pending. I'm not seeing nothing sold. There are homes that are pending and sold here, so there's successful activity, but I'm not seeing any trends from a pricing perspective. So that's one area I'm looking at. Another area that you and I, James, talked about is days on market and square footage. right? So what do we see here? So right now in the actives, what we're seeing is a median 65 days, and we're seeing a median of about 1,000 square feet for a two bed. So the homes that are currently on the market have been on the market about 65 days and have a little over 1,000 square feet. 65 days again tells me not super strong seller's market. Any market that's over 30 days is going to be but less than I'd say 3 or 4 months is a seller's market, but a weak seller's market.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a bad market, just not a real hot market. Now let's compare that to the ones that are under contract and the ones that have sold. So look at the difference here between the median time on the market of the under contracts and the ones that are currently on the market. So 21 days versus 65 days. So what that tells me is that the homes that are priced well, that are marketed well, that are in good condition so far, and that are a little larger. Notice the increase here. The square footage increase by about 50 square feet, 70 square feet, something like that. Right? They're a little larger. And you might say, well, what's 70 square feet? Well, 70 square feet is getting close to a room, so a full room.
Bathroom.
Yeah.
100% bathroom could be a larger, more closets. I always think of 100 square feet as a 10 by 10 room. So when I'm talking with clients about, analysis and so forth, that's a big difference. 100 square feet is a big difference. I'd say here, 70 square feet, not enormous, but significant. What do I see in the solds? Look at the dramatic difference in the solds. Days on market median 12 days and total finished square feet 1214. So much larger. So that's, there's some warning signs here as I'm looking at this data. Number one, the warning signs are that the market is cooling to some degree because these actives, these people up here are pricing higher for lower square footage. In other words, they're overpricing based on square footage, because there were better values for a buyer, let's say 30, 45, 60 days ago with these sold listings. And people are looking at these, right? Buyers are going to look at those. I'm thinking that these homes that are under contract are probably going to sell for less.
Under list. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, right? Because they're looking at that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of overpriced homes in here. That's what I'm taking away based on price per square foot. So overarching analysis here, I've got 87 homes on the market, 26 of which are under contract or have recently sold. That's a success rate of 29.9%. Not terrible, but not what I would consider healthy. When I marry that with the 65 days of median days on market, that's telling me that it's a seller's market, but a cooler seller's market, a weak seller's market. And when I look at the data overall, lots of warning signs that people are overpricing based on what is under contract and what is sold.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts, questions, comments? Makes sense.
This is helpful. I mean, it's, like when I think about this, is I know what I feel and sense intuitively as I'm monitoring the market. But then seeing the data helps to really put some numbers behind it, but also be able to sort of look at in giving clients advice, information about the days on market, information about the price point, in order to be able to make a difference. And that I think comes into factor when we talk about things like A, what's the listing price, but also B, when doing a reduction, by how much.
Yes, absolutely. Especially
So,
that bracketing conversation we talked about, right?
mhm,
That really helps. And, James, you and I talked about it when we spoke, I think last week. You and I talked about how the nice part about success rate and going through this process is you can do it live with a client. Practice it, but you can do it live in a shared in a Zoom call like we're doing.
yeah.
And what it feels like, what James and I talked about, it doesn't feel like we're gaming it when we're doing it live. The stats can be used in a lot of different ways, right? And sometimes people don't trust the stats. My
Hmm.
my father tells an old joke about the person that drowned in a 6 inch in a river with a average depth of 6 inches
Hmm.
because the river went like this and then
Hmm.
right. So you can game it, and people do game it sometimes. And if you do it on the fly with a client, it might help them with trusting what what the right, because you can say, hey, I've done this, but I want to do it live with you so that you can see what I'm seeing in the right now, right? This is the latest data. It's what I love about success rate, what I love about the Compass tools, what I love about this spreadsheet, this Google sheet, and the use of it in this way is quickly I can distill the market down and help a client arrive at the best decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Be able to give the best advice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. James, did this help with the report generation?
It did, and that's exactly what I needed. And I also was thinking when you're listening, while you're doing it this time, is this allows us to speak to what buyers are responding to in the market. So it can
Yeah,
help with preparation and presenting, how we present the home, as well as pricing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of different ways we can quickly use this. One thing you can, now you've got something, if you want to share this, you can pretty it up. Um, you can pretty it up. You can save this as a document, right? So up here, I could save this as 1103 6th Street Northwest.
You can
Comp.
make a CMA out of this, like
Yeah,
make it pretty. If
absolutely. Um, on one note, as we're going through this, I typically call these. I don't use the word CMA a lot,
no,
right? I don't use the word comparative market analysis a lot. What I typically use is what I call comparable market activity. Comparable market activity. Why do I look at it that way? Well, because I feel that it's a compilation of what's going on in the market, and that the analysis is something that is yet to be done, that we do together, that we do alongside the client. Now, you could, I say, if I'm sending a collection, here's the comparable market activity. rather than punch them in the face and say, hey, here's my analysis. I say, hey, here's a collection of comparable market activity that you can review, that we've reviewed. And then I can say, based on the comparable market activity, my recommendation on list price, if we were to sell your home today, your most likely sales price range would likely be X to Y. But then I also caveat it and say, we can't make that decision today because we're not coming to market today. And we're going to have to do this analysis the week before we come to private market or to public market because the market's constantly changing. And of course, that works really well with Compass's 3-phase marketing strategy because we've got private market. Hey, we can test aspirational price. So private market, hey, based on this comparable market activity, let's test aspirational price. Let's shoot for 7. We're looking at the activity back here, and why don't we go for 775 or 7, maybe even 799? Why don't we shoot for the top end?
Yeah.
Right now, obviously, we haven't dove into the specific comps, but phase 1 aspirational, phase 2 Compass coming soon, phase 3 public market, and we'll do an analysis every step of the way. I'm working with one set of folks right now who our private market is shifting because what we're doing with this Vienna property is we're renovating the property. And so she's making active investments over the course of a 60-day period. So is the home the same value at the outset of private exclusive all the way to public market, or could that be changing as she's investing dollars?
Changing.
Absolutely, right? So the good part about private exclusive is that we can adjust that, right? As she's investing dollars and we see, hey, it's had an impact, I recommend we shift our private market price to this to reflect the work that's been done so far. Cool. So that's success rate and the use of all the great Compass tools that we have. Really, and it's fantastic because it's really the marriage of what I love is that we're here because of all the years of development of the Compass tools. Right. We're here because collections search became a reality. We're here because, as I mentioned to you, Compass was actually going to get rid of the Google Sheet because people weren't using it. And I said, no, don't do that. I use it all the time. So the our tech support guy who I was sharing this story with say, hey, could you put together a quick video on how you use it, how you use the Google Sheet? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. Right. This is really powerful. Like this is on the fly, very elegant, self-formatting. And say, I use this more than I use the CMA. Because a lot of our clients some of our clients, they just want to see give me the aggregate. Do they want to see 20 pages of a CMA with color pit? Some people who are information gatherers want the whole thing, right? And that's perfectly fine. That's right. Nothing wrong with that. Give them the pretty CMA. But do some people just want your recommendation or want a one sheet that's, hey, give me the data all in a summary? Right. Absolutely. So that's the beauty of this Google Sheet and you can set it up, whatever your metric is, beds, baths, garage, right? Whatever the parking spaces, which we didn't include here, which is an important part of the analysis. We can shift that. We can shift success rate, but just for this purpose, just kept it to the simple. Cool. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
No, sir.
Awesome.
Now that I've done this 14 times, I think I got it down.
Well, it's funny because the more you do it, and what's going to be cool is you guys use it when we meet every couple of weeks. If you get a little tweak, as you guys are using it, you're going to innovate.
Right.
Right? You're going to, when I first started doing success rate, I wasn't using the Google Sheet like I'm sharing with you now. But now I found it the quick way to aggregate, and it is a tool, a helpful tool in and of itself. So, as you innovate, if you have an idea, that's the whole idea behind this Agent Mastery is let's share and co-elevate. Other thoughts, comments, questions you've got going, things on your mind?
What does the crystal ball say about when the market's going to turn?
Good question. So, all right. So let me share the screen here. This was an excellent article that came out in the Washington Post. It was the first article I'd seen in a while about our market specifically. And did you see this, Orlando? I see you're nodding.
I did.
Yeah. So this was the first article on the spending cuts. And I'll share this with you, James, as well. There were some interesting data points here. And some that I didn't think were particularly compelling also, but just to kind of just to sort of throw things out here. So DC jobless rate climbs. So 4.2 we've got about 5.9 right now, higher than the 4.2 that is the US rate. So this is a bit of a misnomer. I just want to classify it. I don't like the problem with the unemployment rate for the DMV is that the unemployment rate in the District of Columbia itself is traditionally substantially higher than it is in suburban Maryland or suburban Virginia. So I don't like this I think it's interesting to look at it, but I just don't put a lot of stock in it. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I also thought this was interesting. The rate here from 1,064 to 1,747. So unemployment claims rose 64% from February to June. That 64% roughly was about 700 claims. Now, 700 claims is not a lot from an aggregate. From an aggregate perspective, it's not a lot. It's from a real estate perspective, 700 people if we're just talking about the district, in a population that is 650,000 people, that's just not a lot. So this statistic in and of itself, I don't think significantly affects the real estate market. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Right.
And if you disagree, obviously, or have a different opinion or something to just, obviously share. But didn't strike me as particularly. This was the cost of supporting unemployed federal workers. So I don't know what this does this is interesting from a government perspective. I don't know that this really affects us a whole lot.
I think it's just it's the cost of the impact of what's happening, right?
Right. Yeah, the cost on the jurisdictions. But you notice the disproportional effect in the district, right? That's kind of what I was just getting at with the overall unemployment rate.
Yeah, the bigger picture shows you, quite frankly, yeah, that it's
Yeah,
DC, Maryland, and then Virginia.
exactly.
And
And,
by the way,
yeah,
in just casual conversation with Virginia agents last Monday at a happy hour, like they were saying, we're not feeling it as much. Like
100%.
that's the stark, like, what we were sharing about what we're feeling and what we're seeing. But the people that were seeing and feeling it were DC, Maryland based, especially
Yes.
Maryland. So,
Yes. And that's really, I think you see that really reflected here.
yeah.
There really has been no real change in federal employment on the Virginia side. Layoffs are mounting. So this is an interesting graph as to how unemployment rose in 2025 or has in 2025 relative to 2020
Yep.
and then relative to other periods. So these are pretty calm periods. Um,
And
and
2020 is the pandemic, right? Like that.
obviously pandemic. So um, so this isn't nothing, obviously. This is definitely higher than the traditional. Um, and it'll be interesting to see if this, where this goes. I think to your question, Orlando, we don't yet know what the impact's going to be because many of these people took retirement, which means they're not going to be counted unemployed, or they took a buyout, which means that they're not yet eligible for unemployment or are considered unemployed. Right? If you're still receiving money because of because of stipends, because of buyouts and so forth, then you're not on these rolls. So it's going to be somewhere in here that we're going to, is there going to be an effect?
Yeah.
So TBD. This is really interesting. This I think becomes okay. Where are we? I was having a conversation with Leonard over email, Leonard Steinberg over email. Leonard sends out the morning emails because he put something out over the weekend that I said, hey, love your stuff. Little bit of disagreement because he was sharing that in one of his paragraphs that a lot of people mistake the cause of the Great Depression being tariffs, and really the cause of the Great Depression was a reduction in demand. And I said, I love your stuff. I don't think that's right because it's what led to a drop in demand, not a drop in demand itself, right? Why was there a drop in demand? There was a drop in demand because the stock market crashed. There was a drop in demand because banks failed. And because banks failed, people lost their money because there was no FDIC insurance. And then and tariffs did matter because tariffs reduce the money supply. They reduce consumer purchasing power. So there's a whole bunch of factors that led to demand dropping during the Great Depression. It wasn't just demand and lower. I mean, you could always say lower demand is going to affect the economy. Of course, it's going to affect the economy, but why is demand dropping?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is really interesting data here because this says where is demand dropping? And I didn't see anything specifically in this list that that spoke to real estate with the possible exception, well, I should say possible, with the exception of home and garden. I think this was interesting. Home and garden, because home and garden spending is downline from what we do. A lot of times, the we're on the front end of what is considered sort of the home market, right? We help people buy, sell, invest, and then once they buy, sell, invest, what do? They buy home furnishings and they go to Home Depot and start renovations and so forth. So we're a lot of times the front end cog of the wheel that leads to a whole bunch of purchases down line that get classified as home and garden. So overall, nationally, home and garden is down about 2%. Here in the DMV, it's down negative 8%. So that's a warning sign to us. I think, Orlando, to your question initially, this really says that people are tightening. And we're seeing it as it relates to home buyers. I think this statistic may be the most important of everything in this entire article, is that we're right here in the DMV, we are 6% slower in home and garden spending than the nation at large.
Yeah.
DC's population is expected to shrink. Okay. This isn't, I wouldn't consider this, negative 0.2%, particularly, I just don't see that affecting the demand curve tremendously, right? If we were talking about negative 2%, then maybe.
Right.
But the fact that it is dropping is certainly interesting and something to continue to watch. Housing construction. This definitely affects us, right? Housing construction. Housing inventory climbs, signaling demand is starting to dry up. So this is the percentage change in housing inventory, 33, and you look at it compared to other areas of the country. What we see in, generally speaking, we're in a corridor that is outperforming the nation generally. The Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic are generally outperforming other areas of the country. I think you've posted that, Orlando. That's what we're seeing. The markets of the Southwest and the West are very weak markets generally. But this is a little concerning in that DC, notice, these markets, Nevada, California, Arizona, California, Texas, Washington, these are a lot of markets. So is in fact going up. We are seeing buyer activity drop. So here, I think in article, this is what I watch. What I wrote, Leonard, is there are 4 areas that I'm watching now that are leading to reduced demand. Consumer credit and max out. That I'm watching. I'm watching that very closely because that reduces consumer purchasing power and consumer money supply. Growing income inequality. The Trump tax cuts proportionately benefit the wealthy. I don't think it's, I don't think that's a politically charged. I don't see any could you against that. realistically. So it's not benefiting the middle class or the lower class like the middle class. The questionable monetary policy, questionable monetary rate, Great Depression, questionable monetary policy. You know what the Fed did at the beginning of the Great Depression?
No.
They raised rates.
Ah.
They raised rates. Can you imagine? They raised rates. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
Right? You've already got money supply shrinking incredibly. You're not backstopping banks. People are literally losing money, not because of the stock market. They're losing money because anything that isn't in the market, that's in the bank, is now gone. And you're going to tighten money even more. You're going to tighten access to money even more. One of the dumbest Fed policies ever, right? It's actually what got us out of the Great Recession was tremendous Fed policy, right? Like the Fed did everything. They were doing everything to avoid a total financial collapse, right? They're like, we're raising the FDIC insurance from 100. Remember, it was 100,000, and it went up to, I think, 250 or something like that, maybe even 500. I think it's 250 to 500, somewhere in there. So they raised insurance. They started backstopping banks. They started to lend money to private companies, right? Too big to fail. Right? They did all that because had they not done that, we would have had a Great Depression.
Yeah.
So, but the monetary policy hasn't been, Trump is not wrong in that the current Fed set us up for where we are in part. They took too long to raise interest rates. We should never have gotten to inflation of 7, 8, 9%. That's because they took too long to raise interest rates. Right now, I believe that they're taking too long to lower them. I mean, really, a quarter point's nothing, guys. I mean, come on. Like, I just want to say to the Fed, I mean, seriously? Like, what are you doing? It's a quarter. You guys massively raised rates back in 2022, right? You did these incredibly onerous increases of rates, and now you're quibbling over a quarter point. What are you doing? It's just it's so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say questionable, but they do not have a good track. I don't think they've got a good track record. I would not put the current Fed as being strong, and there were two Fed chairs that actually voted against the overall committee's recommendations. The overall committees voted not to lower rates, but there were two Fed chairs that dissented, and that's very important to note because dissent is rare. Public dissent on the committee is rare.
Yeah.
Those chairs wanted to be on record as saying, "I think this is wrong." And then the last thing I think is consumer confidence. Consumer confidence is dropping, and that does affect demand. It affects spending.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest pieces.
Yeah,
I think that people are the uncertainty of everything is what's got people tied up the most right now with decision making. I
yeah,
see it with, as I think we've had discussions where we call them like all of the fence sitters, right?
yeah,
I think people that have looked at properties, we're talking about them, but like an offer won't come through, but they're just kind of sitting there. I don't know what they're waiting for, right?
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I think, again, we've talked about it before. I mean, as in wrap up here's a couple of things that I would say. Number one, there's no perfect time, right? What I would say to some degree is I'd say, remember what Warren Buffett said famously, right? Be fearless when other people are fearful, and be fearful when other people are fearless, right? What are people? People have a lot of fear right now. So what that tells me is there are deals to be had,
Yeah.
right? There are opportunities to be had, right? So whether it's marry the home, date the rate, or whatever it is, it's right now, if we are at a point in time in the DMV market where we don't typically see time on market this long. We don't typically see buyers have this much time to make a decision. So, hey, if you want, this is a good time to buy a home. This isn't a bad time. You have to be betting. The only way you don't buy a home right now, if you're thinking of buying a home in the next 12 months, is if you're betting on the market really dropping from here. And based on what? I don't believe that we're headed toward a great recession. We're not. We're just not. You know what I'm most fearful of? What I'm most fearful of is actually purgatory. I think we are, our policy, particularly the tariff policy, I think that's what's leading to the uncertainty right now, is more likely to lead us to this weird place where people are just stuck.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be terrible economically, but it's not going to be good economically either. It's kind of the worst possible outcome. It might be healthier for us to have a 2-quarter recession in the back half of the year, just get it over with, have the Fed drop the rates, and let's get going again in 2026. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're gonna, these tariffs, he's negotiating the tariffs in a way that it's just painful enough that it's like death by, what do they say? Death by 1,000
1,000 cuts.
by 1,000 cuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a bunch of cuts.
Yeah.
So I think I think if I'm advising someone, now it's different, right? It's what are you buying? If you're going to buy a studio or a 1-bedroom, get it at a great deal, or maybe you don't want to buy in that market. Because the condo market's it's not going anywhere positive for a while, right? It's going to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because people will rent them. They're not going to, if they can't sell them, they'll rent them. Most people are not going to just dump them. You guys have seen it, right? They can't sell them, they're going to rent them. So the market's not going to drop massively, but it's not going to go up in that market. But we're talking about larger condo, 2-bed, townhome, single family detached home, if you're waiting for certainty, then you're going to wait for a situation that's going to be harder to buy in. That is the history of the real estate market in the DMV since 1996. And I say 96 because it's in 96, 97 that the capital gains exclusion happened. And most people believe that that's what led us into a different type of home market. That change of the ability to capture capital gains without significant penalty made homes much more tradable. Right? Before that, it was a very significant taxable event. And as a result, people held on to their homes longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think since 19, you're making a bet. In my opinion, you're making a very risky bet. You'd probably be better going to Vegas and betting on red or black than to not buy a home, a townhome or a single family detached home in the DMV because you think prices are going to get lower.
Yeah.
It's not a 0%, and I'm not saying it's a 0% probability. Could prices go a little bit lower? Sure, but it's a once every 20-year phenomenon. That's worse than red or black.
Right.
All right, fellas.
Alrighty.
Hope that was helpful.
Very helpful. Thank
As
you.
always.
All right. Have a good
We'll
one.
chat soon. Yep.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.